The stars were dying. Admiral Zethkar watched from the bridge of his flagship as another coalition vessel exploded in the distance. The bright flash lasted only seconds before the cold darkness of space swallowed it whole. His scaled hands gripped the command chair as he counted the losses. 47 ships destroyed in the last hour. 300 crew members dead with each ship. The enemy moved like a plague across the battlefield. The Void Swarm had no single ships. Instead, they formed a massive cloud of dark metal that shifted and changed shape as it fought. When coalition forces fired their weapons, the swarm simply moved out of the way. When they tried new tactics, the enemy learned and adapted within minutes. "Admiral, the Terran defense line has fallen," reported Commander Veltar, his voice shaking. The young officer's 4 eyes darted between the tactical displays. "The humans, they're all gone." Zethkar closed his eyes for a moment. The humans had been the coalition's best hope. Their ships were old and ugly compared to the sleek vessels of other species, but human crews fought with a stubbornness that amazed everyone. They never gave up, even when facing impossible odds. Now they were silent. "Sir, we're receiving retreat orders from High Command," another officer announced. "All remaining ships are to fall back to the sanctuary systems." The Admiral looked at the tactical display one more time. The Void Swarm had destroyed 90% of the Coalition fleet in just 3 days. They had tried everything: energy weapons that could crack planets, missiles that could chase targets across star systems, even the forbidden quantum bombs that could tear holes in space itself. Nothing worked. The swarm was too smart. It learned from every attack and found ways to counter them. Worse, it seemed to grow stronger with each victory. The dark cloud now stretched across half the star system, feeding on the wreckage of destroyed ships. "Begin the retreat," Zethkar ordered. He hated the words, but staying meant death for his remaining crew. "Signal all ships to jump to hyperspace in sequence. We'll make our stand at—" Alarms suddenly screamed across the bridge. Every screen flashed red as the sensors detected something impossible. A massive energy signature had appeared at the edge of the system, where empty space had been just moments before. "What is that?" demanded the Admiral. The sensor officer's tentacles worked frantically over his controls. "Sir, I'm reading multiple contacts. Large vessels, but they're not showing up properly on our scans. It's like they're absorbing most of our sensor beams." On the main screen, shapes began to emerge from the darkness. Ships, dozens of them. They were black as the void between stars, their hulls seeming to drink in light rather than reflect it. The vessels moved in perfect formation, each one larger than a coalition cruiser but smaller than a battleship. "I've never seen designs like those," whispered Commander Veltar. "They look old, ancient." Zethkar studied the approaching fleet. The ships had a brutal, industrial look to them. Where coalition vessels were built with graceful curves and artistic details, these newcomers were all sharp angles and heavy armor plating. They looked like weapons that had been shaped into ship form. "Are they responding to communication attempts?" he asked. "Negative, sir. They're maintaining radio silence." "But Admiral—" The communications officer paused. "I'm detecting coalition emergency codes in their broadcasts. Very old ones. Codes that haven't been used for over 300 years. 300 years. That was when humanity had vanished from galactic politics. They had simply withdrawn to their home system and stopped answering calls from other species. Many thought they had died out or destroyed themselves in some war. Others believed they had simply given up and chosen isolation. "Sir, the Void Swarm is changing direction," reported the tactical officer. "They're moving toward the new arrivals." The dark cloud of enemy ships rippled and flowed like liquid metal. It had been advancing steadily toward the retreating coalition forces, but now it seemed drawn to these mysterious black ships. The swarm moved with the same confident purpose it had shown throughout the battle. But something was different. The enemy's movement seemed more cautious now, less certain. "Admiral, I'm getting partial readings on the new fleet," announced the sensor officer. "The ships are definitely human in origin. The energy signatures match old Terran designs from before the withdrawal." Zethkar felt his blood go cold. Humans, but not the humans they knew. These ships were from before the disappearance, before humanity had chosen to hide behind their borders and avoid galactic affairs. "Open a channel to the lead vessel," he ordered. "All frequencies." The communications officer worked for several minutes before shaking his head. "No response, sir. They're not acknowledging our transmissions." On the screen, the black ships continued their advance. They moved with mechanical precision, each vessel staying in perfect formation with the others. There was something unsettling about their movement. It was too coordinated, too perfect. The void swarm reached the human fleet first. The dark cloud spread out, trying to surround the newcomers the same way it had defeated every other force. Sensor readings showed the enemy beginning its adaptation process, analyzing the human ships to find weaknesses. Then something strange happened. The black ships simply stopped. They hung motionless in space as the swarms swirled around them like a living storm. For long minutes, nothing happened. No weapons fire, no movement, just two fleets facing each other in the darkness. "What are they waiting for?" muttered Commander Veltar. Zethkar didn't answer. He was remembering old stories his grandfather had told him. Tales from the early days of the Coalition, when humanity first made contact with other species. There had been another enemy then, a different threat that had tried to conquer the galaxy. The story said humanity had dealt with that threat in a way that terrified even their allies, but the details had been classified or lost over time. Only fragments remained, whispers about human ships that fought like demons, about weapons that violated every law of civilized warfare, about fleets that appeared from nowhere and disappeared just as quickly, leaving only devastation behind. "Admiral, energy readings are spiking across the human fleet," reported the sensor officer. "Whatever they're doing, it's building to something big." The black ships began to change. Their hulls shifted and rippled as if they were alive. Weapon ports opened along their sides like the eyes of waking beasts. The formation spread out, but not randomly. They moved with purpose, taking positions that seemed to trap the void swarm between them. "Sir, I'm detecting massive power buildups in their weapon systems," announced the tactical officer. "These readings, they're off the charts. I've never seen energy signatures like this." Zethkar realized his hands were shaking. Something about these ships felt wrong. Not evil exactly, but dangerous in a way that made his instincts scream warnings. They were like sleeping predators that had just opened their eyes. The void swarm seemed to sense the change too. The dark cloud began to contract, pulling its scattered elements back together. For the first time since the battle began, the enemy appeared uncertain. Then the lead human ship broadcast a single message on all frequencies. The voice was cold and mechanical, speaking in the ancient human language called English. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Deep Fleet. You have awakened something that should have stayed sleeping. Prepare for consequences." The transmission cut off, leaving only silence. In that silence, Zethkar finally understood why his grandfather's stories had always ended the same way. Not with victory or defeat, but with the simple warning that some enemies were better left undisturbed. The black ships began to move forward and the real battle was about to begin. Admiral Sarah Chen opened her eyes for the first time in 3 centuries. The cryosleep chamber hissed as warm air replaced the freezing gas that had kept her body preserved. Her muscles ached as feeling returned to her limbs, but her mind was already sharp and focused. The bridge of the TDFS Retribution looked exactly as she remembered. Dark metal walls covered with tactical displays. Crew stations arranged in a circle around her command chair. Everything built for function, not beauty. This was a warship, not a luxury yacht. "Status report," she ordered, her voice hoarse from the long sleep. Captain Marcus Webb, her second-in-command, stepped forward. Like Chen, he had just awakened from cryosleep, but he moved with the quick efficiency that marked all Deep Fleet officers. "All ships report ready for combat operations, Admiral. The swarm has been detected in the Kepler system, engaging Coalition forces." Chen nodded as she walked to the main tactical display. The screen showed the current battle situation in detail. Coalition ships retreating, enemy forces advancing. everything proceeding exactly as the Deep Fleet's computers had predicted it would. "How long since the activation signal?" she asked. 72 hours, ma'am." The automated systems detected swarm activity and began the awakening process. "We've been monitoring their advance since coming online. 3 days. The Void Swarm had returned after 300 years of silence, and it had taken them only 3 days to nearly destroy the Coalition fleet." Chen wasn't surprised. The galaxy had grown soft during the peace. They had forgotten what real warfare looked like. "Communications from the Coalition forces?" she inquired. "Multiple attempts, Admiral. They're trying to warn us about the swarm's adaptive capabilities. They want us to retreat." Chen almost smiled. Retreat. As if the Deep Fleet had traveled across half the galaxy just to run away at the first sign of danger. The Coalition had no idea who they were dealing with. She turned to the communications station. "Open a channel to the fleet. All ships, all frequencies." The officer nodded. "Channel open, ma'am." Chen's voice carried across every ship in the Deep Fleet as she spoke. "This is Admiral Chen to all vessels. We have been asleep for 3 centuries, waiting for this moment. The enemy that once threatened humanity has returned. They believe we are the same species they faced before. They are wrong." She paused, looking at the tactical display where the Void Swarm was moving to engage her fleet. "The old humanity tried to reason with them, tried to find peaceful solutions. That humanity is dead. What awakens today is something different, something harder. Begin the doctrine." Across the fleet, crews that had slept for 300 years began activating systems that had never been used in actual combat. Weapons that existed only in classified files. Technologies that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Deep Fleet had been humanity's answer to an old question. What happens when you push a peaceful species too far? "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Coalition flagship," reported the communications officer. Chen gestured for the message to be put on screen. The face that appeared belonged to Admiral Zethkar of the Soran Empire. His reptilian features showed the stress of the losing battle, but also curiosity about the newcomers. "Unknown human vessels. This is Admiral Zethkar of the Coalition Defense Force. I don't know who you are or where you've been, but you need to retreat immediately. The Void Swarm adapts to any weapon or tactic within minutes. They've already defeated our best forces. Please, save yourselves and fall back to the sanctuary systems." Chen studied the alien admiral. He seemed like a good officer, someone who cared about his people. The old humanity would have appreciated that, would have tried to work with him to find a solution that saved everyone. She wasn't the old humanity. "Admiral Zethkar," Chen replied, her voice carrying no emotion. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Deep Fleet. Your warnings are noted but unnecessary. The Void Swarm's adaptive capabilities are already known to us. They were the reason we were created." She saw confusion cross the alien's face. "Created? I don't understand." 3 centuries ago, the Void Swarm made first contact with humanity. They demanded our surrender and threatened to destroy Earth if we refused. We tried diplomacy first. When that failed, we fought them with conventional weapons. When those proved inadequate, we escalated. Chen's expression grew cold as old memories surfaced. The war lasted 18 months. The swarm adapted to everything we threw at them, just as they're adapting to your weapons now. They believed they would eventually wear us down and claim victory. "What happened?" asked Zethkar. "Humanity discovered that adaptation requires time. Learning requires observation. If you don't give the enemy time to adapt, their greatest strength becomes meaningless." Chen gestured to the tactical display. "The Deep Fleet represents the final phase of that war. We are what humanity became when we stopped trying to fight fair." The alien admiral's eyes widened. "You won?" But the records show the swarm disappeared shortly after contact with humanity. We thought they had withdrawn or been destroyed by some natural disaster. "They were destroyed," Chen confirmed. "Every ship, every drone, every trace of their civilization in this galaxy. We hunted them across 1,000 star systems and eliminated them completely. The only reason any survived was because some of their forces were operating in distant galaxies beyond our reach." She turned away from the screen, no longer interested in the conversation. Those survivors have now returned. They made one critical error in their plans. What error? Zethkar asked. Chen looked back at him with eyes that held no warmth. They woke us up. She cut the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. Range to enemy forces? 2 million kilometers and closing, Admiral. The swarm is spreading out, trying to surround us. Let them. Beginning scanning of enemy formations and capabilities. She walked to her command chair and sat down. All ships, begin Phase 1 deployment. Show them what they're dealing with. The deep fleet began to change. Ships that had appeared to be simple cruisers suddenly unfolded like mechanical flowers. Hidden weapon ports opened along their hulls. Additional armor plating slid into position. Within minutes, each vessel had transformed into something twice its original size. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was how the ships moved afterward. They didn't maintain formation like normal fleets. Instead, they spread out in a pattern that seemed random but felt organic, like a pack of predators surrounding prey. Admiral, the coalition forces are requesting permission to assist, reported the communications officer. Denied, Chen replied without hesitation. Tell them to maintain their distance and observe. What they're about to see will either reassure them or terrify them. Either way, they need to witness it. The Void Swarm was now close enough for detailed scanning. Just as the reports had indicated, it was a collection of adaptive machines that shared information instantly. Any tactic used against one part of the swarm would be known by all parts within seconds. It was exactly what the Deep Fleet had been designed to fight. Phase 2, Chen ordered. Begin psychological operations. Across the fleet, new systems came online. Transmission arrays that had been hidden in the ship's hulls began broadcasting on frequencies that the swarm used for internal communication. But instead of tactical data, they sent something else entirely. Recordings. Battle footage from the original war 3 centuries ago. Images of swarm ships being torn apart by human weapons. Data showing the complete extinction of the swarm's original forces. The enemy's advance slowed as they processed this information. For the first time since arriving in the system, the Void Swarm seemed uncertain. Chen smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. They remember us now. They're realizing what they've awakened. The real battle was about to begin, and the Deepy Fleet was ready to remind the galaxy why humanity had once been both feared and respected across the stars. The first human ship that charged directly into the Void Swarm surprised everyone watching. Coalition officers expected tactical formations and careful maneuvering. Instead, the TDFS Vengeance accelerated to ramming speed and drove straight into the center of the enemy cloud. Admiral Zethkar watched in horror from his bridge. "Are they committing suicide?" he demanded. The Vengeance disappeared into the dark mass of swarm units, its hull taking massive damage from enemy weapons. For a moment, it seemed like the humans had made a terrible mistake. Then the ship exploded. But this wasn't a normal explosion. The blast was controlled, directed, turning the Vengeance into a massive fragmentation bomb. Thousands of metal shards flew out in all directions, each one moving at incredible speed. The shards tore through swarm units like bullets through paper. More importantly, each shard carried a small device that attached itself to enemy ships and began transmitting false data. Within seconds, parts of the swarm were receiving conflicting information from their own units. "Brilliant," whispered Commander Veltar. "They're using the swarm's communication network against them." Admiral Chen watched the results from her command chair. The sacrifice of one ship had created chaos among hundreds of swarm units. They were firing on each other, confused by the false signals. "Phase 3, she ordered. "Begin the harvest." More human ships moved into attack position, but not in any formation the galaxy had ever seen. Some ships flew backwards, firing with rear-mounted weapons. Others spun like tops, their rotating hulls making them impossible to target accurately. A few simply drifted through the battle like asteroids, looking dead until enemy ships came, close enough to trigger hidden weapon systems. Each human vessel fought differently. The swarm's adaptation protocols couldn't keep up because there was no consistent pattern to analyze. Every ship seemed to operate under its own tactical doctrine. Captain Webb coordinated the attack from his position next to Chen. The swarm is trying to adapt, but they can't process this much chaotic data at once, he reported. Their learning algorithms are overloading. As intended, Chen replied. Humans don't fight like machines. We fight like living creatures. Unpredictable, emotional, chaotic. She paused to watch another ship perform an impossible maneuver, its hull bending in ways that should have torn it apart. The swarm can adapt to logic. They cannot adapt to madness. The human ships weren't just using strange tactics. Their weapons were equally bizarre. Energy beams that changed frequency randomly. Missiles that split into smaller missiles, which split again into even smaller ones. Projectile weapons that fired everything from metal slugs to chunks of compressed spacetime. One ship, the TDFS Chaos Theory, was firing what appeared to be miniature black holes. The tiny gravity wells didn't cause much direct damage, but they warped space around enemy ships, making it impossible for the swarm units to maintain formation or coordinate their movements. Admiral, the coalition forces are requesting an explanation of our tactics, reported the communications officer. Chen considered this for a moment. The alien species had always fought wars according to established rules and traditions. Clean, honorable conflicts with clear objectives and minimal civilian casualties. They didn't understand what they were seeing. Open a channel to Admiral Zethkar, she ordered. The reptilian commander appeared on screen, his expression mixing amazement with concern. Admiral Chen, your tactics are unconventional. How are your ships performing those maneuvers? Our physics models say half of what you're doing should be impossible. Your physics models assume we're fighting by your rules, Chen replied. We're not. Human military doctrine is based on a simple principle: victory at any cost. We don't fight to look impressive or maintain honor. We fight to ensure our enemies never want to fight us again. She gestured to the tactical display where human ships continued their chaotic assault. Every vessel in this fleet was designed to break the rules of conventional warfare. Our hulls use metamaterials that can change shape and density during combat. Our weapons draw power from sources your scientists consider theoretical. Our tactical computers don't calculate optimal strategies. They calculate maximum psychological impact. Zethkar stared at her. Psychological impact? Watch, Chen ordered. On the screen, a human ship designated as the TDFS Nightmare approached a cluster of swarm units. Instead of firing weapons, it began broadcasting on all frequencies. The transmission wasn't tactical data or demands for surrender. It was the sound of human laughter, loud, maniacal laughter that echoed across the battlefield. The swarm units reacted immediately, trying to jam the transmission, but the laughter was being broadcast on frequencies that interfered with their own communication systems. As they attempted to block it, their coordination began to break down. The swarm is a collective intelligence, Chen explained to the horrified alien admiral. They think as one mind. Introduce chaos into that mind and the entire system becomes unstable. The laughter was joined by other sounds: human music, poetry, the sounds of children playing, random noise that meant nothing to the swarm, but disrupted their ability to process information efficiently. Some swarm units began firing randomly, their targeting systems confused by the psychological warfare. Others attempted to retreat, only to run into their own forces. The perfect coordination that made them so dangerous was falling apart. This is madness, Zethkar whispered. Yes, Chen agreed. That's the point. The galaxy has spent centuries developing more efficient weapons and more logical tactics. We went in the opposite direction. When everyone else chose reason, humanity chose controlled insanity. A new wave of human ships entered the battle, these ones even stranger than the first. They moved like living creatures, their hulls pulsing and flexing as if they were breathing. When they fired their weapons, the energy beams twisted and coiled through space like serpents. Admiral, those ships, Veltar pointed at the screen. Are they alive? Chen's smile was cold. In a sense, Biomechanical hybrids. Human neural tissue integrated with quantum computers and exotic matter reactors. They think like humans, but react like machines. The perfect fusion of chaos and control. The biomechanical ships began coordinating with the purely mechanical vessels, creating attack patterns that seemed to follow no rules except maximum destruction. They moved through the swarm like antibodies attacking an infection, adapting their tactics in real time while maintaining their unpredictable nature. "The swarm is retreating," reported Captain Webb. Chen studied the tactical display. The enemy was indeed pulling back, their forces regrouping at the edge of the system. But she could see from their movement patterns that they weren't giving up. They were trying to analyze what they had experienced and develop countermeasures. "They're adapting to our chaos," she observed. "Impressive. Most enemies break completely when faced with our doctrine." "Orders, Admiral?" asked Webb. Chen stood from her command chair and walked to the main display. The swarm had learned from the first engagement and was already modifying their approach. They were becoming more random themselves, trying to match human unpredictability with their own chaotic movements. "They think they understand us now," she said quietly. "They believe they can become as chaotic as we are." She turned to face her bridge crew, and every officer saw something in her eyes that made them glad she was on their side. Time to show them the difference between chaos and madness. Begin Phase 4. Activate the Black Protocol. Across the deep fleet, systems that had never been used in actual combat began to power up. The strange human ships that had amazed and terrified the coalition were about to reveal their true nature. The real fight was just beginning. The transformation began slowly. At first, Admiral Zethkar thought the human ships were simply reconfiguring their weapon systems. The dark hulls shifted and flowed like liquid metal, revealing new weapon ports and defensive systems. But then, something impossible happened. The ships began to merge. "By the Seven Suns," whispered Commander Veltar. "Are they connecting to each other?" Two human cruisers moved together until their hulls touched. Instead of bouncing off or causing damage, the metal flowed together like water, creating a single larger vessel. Then more ships joined the merger, their individual forms disappearing into a growing mass of dark metal. Admiral Chen watched the process from her bridge with calm satisfaction. "All ships report successful integration," announced Captain Webb. "The collective is forming." "Collective?" Zethkar's voice came through the communication channel filled with confusion and growing fear. "Admiral Chen, what is happening to your fleet?" Chen turned to the screen where the alien commander waited for answers. "We are becoming what we were always meant to be, Admiral. The individual ships you've been watching were never separate vessels. They were components of a single entity, designed to operate independently when necessary, but capable of something much greater when the situation demands it." On the tactical display, nearly 50 human ships had combined into a structure that defied every rule of physics and engineering. The resulting vessel was massive, easily the size of a small moon, but it moved with the agility of a fighter craft. Its surface rippled and shifted constantly, making it impossible to target specific systems. "This is impossible," breathed Zethkar. "No technology can create matter manipulation on this scale." "Your technology can't," Chen corrected. "Human technology evolved differently. While other species focused on building better ships, we learned to build living ships. Ships that could think, adapt, and evolve during combat." She paused as the merged vessel began to reshape itself. "The Deep Fleet isn't a collection of warships. It's a single organism designed for one purpose: the complete extinction of threats to humanity." The Void Swarm had been regrouping at the edge of the system, but now they began advancing again. They had adapted to the chaotic tactics of individual human ships and were confident they could handle whatever came next. Their formation was tighter now, more coordinated, designed to counter unpredictable enemy movements. They were not prepared for what they faced. The merged human vessel didn't move like a ship. It flowed through space like a living creature, its form constantly changing to avoid enemy fire. Weapon systems appeared and disappeared across its surface, firing from unexpected angles before vanishing again. But the truly terrifying aspect wasn't its shape-changing ability. It was the intelligence behind it. "Open a channel to the swarm," Chen ordered. The communications officer looked confused. "Ma'am, the swarm doesn't respond to diplomatic contact. They'll respond to this," Chen interrupted. A voice emerged from the merged vessel, broadcast on all frequencies. But it wasn't just Chen's voice. It was hundreds of voices speaking in perfect unison, creating a harmony that was both beautiful and deeply unsettling. "Void Swarm Collective Intelligence," the voices said. "You have returned to threatened species under human protection. This is your only warning. Withdraw from this galaxy immediately, or face complete extinction." "For the first time since the battle," began, the swarm responded with words instead of weapons. The reply came in a synthesized voice that seemed to emanate from every enemy unit simultaneously. "Humanity. You have evolved since our last encounter. Impressive. But you remain organic. Limited. We have grown stronger during our exile. We will adapt to your new forms and claim victory as we have across 1,000 galaxies." The merged human vessel pulsed with dark energy. When the unified voices responded, there was something in the tone that made every listener feel cold. "You misunderstand the situation. We are no longer purely organic. 3 centuries ago, humanity made a choice. We could remain limited by biology, or we could transcend it. We chose transcendence." Chen felt the neural link connecting her to every other crew member in the merged vessel. Their thoughts, their knowledge, their experiences, all shared in perfect harmony. She was still herself, but she was also part of something infinitely larger. "Show them," she whispered. And the collective heard. The merged vessel began to change again, but this transformation was different. The dark metal surface became transparent in places, revealing the interior structure. Inside, the coalition, observers could see something that challenged their understanding of life itself. Corridors that pulsed like arteries. Command centers that looked like neural clusters. And throughout it all, human figures moving with perfect coordination, their bodies enhanced with mechanical components, their minds linked to the ship's quantum consciousness. "Dear gods," Zethkar muttered, "they've become part of the ship." "Not part of it," Chen's voice carried clearly through the communication link. "We are it. Every human in this fleet volunteered for biological integration 3 centuries ago. We gave up individual existence to become something capable of protecting our species and our allies." The swarm's response was immediate and violent. Thousands of enemy units opened fire simultaneously, their weapons creating a storm of energy that should have destroyed any normal vessel. But the merged human ship simply absorbed the attack, its surface drinking in the energy like a sponge. Then, it fired back. The weapons that emerged from the collective weren't recognizable as any known technology. Beams of twisted space-time that aged enemy ships to dust in seconds. Projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them impossible to dodge. Energy waves that didn't just destroy matter, but erased it from existence entirely. But the most devastating weapon was information itself. The collective began broadcasting directly into the swarm's communication network, not with false data this time, but with something far worse. The complete tactical history of humanity's wars. Every battle, every strategy, every weapon, every psychological trick developed over millennia of human conflict. The swarm's collective intelligence was forced to process thousands of years of warfare data in seconds, overwhelming their adaptive capabilities. Some swarm units began firing on their own forces, confused by conflicting tactical information. Others simply shut down, their processing systems overloaded. The perfect coordination that made them dangerous was collapsing under the weight of human military knowledge. "You wanted to understand us," the collective voices said, each word driving deeper into the swarm's shared consciousness. "Now you do. We are not just warriors. We are war itself, given form and purpose. We are the accumulated violence of a species that conquered its own world before reaching for the stars." The swarm tried to retreat, but the collective moved to block them. What followed wasn't a battle in any traditional sense, it was an extermination. The merged human vessel flowed around enemy formations like a predator, striking with weapons that violated the laws of physics and tactics that defied comprehension. When individual swarm units tried to surrender, the collective's response was, without mercy. Surrender was an option 3 centuries ago. You chose to wake the sleeping giant. Now face the consequences of that choice. Admiral Zethkar watched the slaughter from his bridge, his crew silent with shock and awe. The humans weren't just winning. They were demonstrating why some species should never be provoked beyond a certain point. Admiral, Commander Veltar whispered. Should we assist them? Zethkar shook his head slowly. No, we're witnessing something that the galaxy needs to see, something that needs to be remembered. He paused as another wave of swarm units vanished under the collective's assault. We're seeing what happens when humanity stops holding back. The battle was ending, but the real demonstration of human power was yet to come. As the last swarm units fell silent, the collective began to change once more, preparing for its final act of terror. Silence fell across the Kepler system like a blanket of death. Where moments before there had been the chaos of battle, now there was only the soft hum of damaged coalition ships and the steady pulse of the merged human vessel. The void swarm was gone. Not defeated, not retreating, completely erased from existence. No wreckage floated in space. No energy signatures remained. It was as if the enemy had never existed at all. Admiral Zethkar stared at his tactical display, unable to believe what the sensors were telling him. Scan again, he ordered his crew. Full spectrum analysis. There has to be something left. The sensor officer worked frantically over his controls, running every type of scan the coalition possessed. Sir, I'm detecting trace amounts of exotic particles, but no solid matter. No energy sources. No signs of any swarm technology anywhere in the system. How? Whispered Commander Veltar. How do you completely erase an entire fleet from existence? The answer came from an unexpected source. The merged human vessel was separating, its massive form flowing apart into individual ships once again. As the transformation completed, Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication channel. The swarm has been processed and absorbed, she announced, her tone as calm as if she were reporting the weather. Their technology has been analyzed and integrated into our database. Their tactical knowledge has been added to our collective memory. Their threat to this galaxy has been permanently eliminated. Zethkar found his voice with difficulty. Processed? You mean you consumed them? In a sense, Chen replied. The collective doesn't just destroy enemies, it learns from them. Every weapon, every strategy, every technological advantage they possessed is now part of our capabilities. They have become part of us whether they wanted to or not. The implications of this statement sent cold fear through every coalition officer listening. The humans hadn't just won a battle. They had absorbed their enemies completely, growing stronger from the victory. Admiral Chen, Zethkar began carefully. What are your intentions now? Will you remain in coalition space? There was a long pause before Chen answered. Our mission is complete. The threat has been eliminated. We will return to our patrol routes at the galaxy's edge, where we have maintained watch for 3 centuries. Patrol routes? The alien admiral was confused. You've been patrolling all this time. Did you think we simply vanished? Chen's voice carried a hint of amusement. Humanity has been guarding the borders of this galaxy since the first swarm incursion. We've prevented 17 different invasion attempts, destroyed 12 hostile species that threatened galactic stability, and eliminated countless pirates and raiders before they could reach inhabited systems. She paused, letting this information sink in. The peace you've enjoyed for the past 300 years wasn't an accident. It was bought with human vigilance and paid for with human sacrifice. Captain Webb's voice joined the conversation. We are the Watchers in the Dark, Admiral Zethkar. We stand guard at the edge of known space, facing threats that would destroy civilized species. We do this not for glory or recognition. but because someone must. The coalition forces listened in stunned silence as the truth was revealed. While they had built beautiful cities and created advanced art, while they had focused on trade and diplomacy, humanity had been fighting a secret war to keep them safe. Why? Zethkar asked. Why sacrifice so much for species that barely remember you exist? Chen's response was quiet, but carried across every ship in the system. Because that's what Guardians do. We protect those who cannot protect themselves, even if they never know we exist, even if they fear us when they finally see what we've become. The human ships had finished their separation and were beginning to power down their weapon systems. But even in their passive state, they radiated a sense of barely contained violence that made every alien crew member nervous. There is something you need to understand, Chen continued. What you witnessed today was not humanity at its most dangerous. This was us being careful, being restrained. We held back because we were in the presence of allies. She let that statement hang in the space between them before continuing. The swarm you saw destroyed represented less than 1% of their original force. The majority of their fleets are still out there, in distant galaxies, growing stronger and preparing for another invasion attempt. When they come again, and they will come again, we will be ready. Admiral Zethkar felt a chill run through his scaled hide. How many more times can you do this? How many more battles can humanity fight before? Before what? Chen interrupted. Before we become something that even our allies fear? Admiral, we crossed that line 3 centuries ago. We made peace with what we had to become. The question isn't whether we can continue fighting. The question is whether the galaxy can continue accepting our protection while pretending we don't exist. The alien commander had no answer for that. How do you thank someone for becoming a monster on your behalf? How do you express gratitude to a species that had sacrificed its own humanity to protect yours? We ask only one thing in return for our service, Chen said, her voice growing distant. Remember this day. Remember what you saw here. And if anyone asks what happened to the humans, tell them the truth. What is the truth? Zethkar asked. That we chose duty over peace. We chose sacrifice over comfort. We chose to become something terrible and necessary, so that others could remain something beautiful and innocent. Chen's voice carried a weight of centuries. We became the darkness, so you could stay in the light. The human ships were already beginning to move away from the battlefield, their black hulls fading into the darkness of space. Soon they would be gone, returning to their lonely patrol routes at the galaxy's edge. Wait, Zethkar called out. Will we see you again? Chen's final transmission was barely audible, coming from ships that were already becoming invisible to coalition sensors. Pray that you don't, Admiral. If you see us again, it means something has gone very wrong in your galaxy. It means the darkness has grown too strong for us to handle alone. The last human ship disappeared from view, leaving only empty space and the wreckage of coalition vessels that had been damaged in the earlier fighting. The silence that followed was different from the silence during battle. This was the quiet of ending, of a chapter closing. Commander Veltar was the first to speak. Sir, what do we tell High Command? How do we explain what happened here? Zethkar looked at the empty space where the human fleet had vanished. We tell them the truth. We tell them that humanity never disappeared. They just stepped into the shadows to keep watch over the rest of us. He turned to his communications officer. Send a message to all coalition forces. Full details of everything we witnessed here today. Every species in the galaxy needs to know what really happened to the humans. As his crew began preparing the report, Zethkar remained at his command station, staring at the starfield where the battle had taken place. In the distance, other coalition ships were beginning rescue operations and damage assessment. Life was returning to normal, but he knew that somewhere out there beyond the edge of known space, dark ships were resuming their eternal patrol, silent guardians watching for threats that most species couldn't even imagine, protectors who had given up everything to ensure that peace could continue. The galaxy owed humanity a debt that could never be repaid. They had asked for nothing except to be remembered for what they had chosen to become. Zethkar made a silent promise to honor that request. Some sacrifices deserve to be witnessed. Some guardians deserve to be remembered, even if what they had become was too terrible to fully comprehend. The stars continued to shine in the darkness, peaceful and safe, watched over by shadows that moved between them like silent gods of war.